If the Taiwan Strait closes tomorrow, Apple doesn't just fall, it stops. The entire tech sector freezes. I'm Mr. Tommy. This is FinAnatomy. We analyze geopolitical risk, we don't give financial advice. Let's get right to the data.
You know, the entire modern world, everything from our markets to our military, it's all balancing on this single, fragile point of failure. And no, that's not an exaggeration. It's a systemic risk, and it's centered on one island, and really on just one company.
Think about this number for a second. Over 90%. That's the share of the world's most advanced semiconductors that are made in Taiwan. This isn't just market dominance, folks. It's a near monopoly on the most critical component of our entire modern economy. Every single major tech advancement we depend on flows right through this one choke point. And this right here, this gets to the very heart of the business model. You've got companies like Apple, NVIDIA, AMD. They're brilliant architects, right? They design the world's most powerful chips, but they don't actually build them. For the real cutting-edge manufacturing, they all go to one place, TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. So what does that mean? It means the whole AI revolution, the shift to EVs, our next generation of military hardware, it's all built on a foundation that's just 100 miles off the coast of mainland China.
And this risk, it isn't just bottled up in the tech sector, not at all. Data from Goldman Sachs shows that semiconductors are a direct input for 169 other industries. We're talking automotive, healthcare, energy, you name it. The entire nervous system of the modern economy runs on these chips. This has created an economic liability of a scale we've never seen before, a vulnerability that absolutely has to be factored into any modern portfolio.
Now, for decades, investors, policymakers, they've all been sort of comforted by a theory that was supposed to neutralize this risk. It was called the silicon shield. The problem? That shield is now a myth. Let's break down why it's just not a viable defense anymore.
So the core idea behind the silicon shield was pretty simple. Taiwan's chip industry just made it too important to fail. The logic was that any attack would cause such catastrophic economic damage for everyone, and that includes China, that it basically created a kind of economic mutually assured destruction. And you know what? For a long time, that logic actually held up. But today, it's a dangerously outdated assumption.
The strategic reality has just fundamentally shifted. While the old theory was worried about a full-scale invasion, recent war games from the Center for Strategic and International Studies, or CSIS, show that a blockade is a far more plausible first move for Beijing. It lets them choke Taiwan's economy without the insane cost of an amphibious assault. And crucially, that old belief that economic ties would guarantee peace, it's being replaced by a new reality. National security now trumps economic efficiency, period.
The other really critical pillar of that silicon shield was the assumption of unquestioned U.S. military dominance in the region. Well, that pillar has cracked. As the U.S. Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall put it, just as plainly as you can, that technological cushion is gone. The military balance of power in the Taiwan Strait has dramatically changed, and with it, the entire risk calculation has changed too.
So, if the shield is a myth and a conflict is plausible, we have to move beyond theory. What does the actual, tangible economic fallout look like? Let's wargame the consequences.
In a conflict, supply chains don't just slow down, they shatter. The analysis from CSIS is stark. The moment a conflict kicks off, insurance for commercial shipping to the region just vanishes. That means no normal shipping. Trade would stop, not just with Taiwan, but likely with China's major ports too. The entire system would just seize up instantly.
And the price tag for this seizure? It's breathtaking. Bloomberg Economics estimates a war over Taiwan would cost the global economy around $10 trillion. That's 10% of global GDP. To put that in perspective, the 2008 financial crisis wiped out about 4% of global GDP. So the impact of a Taiwan conflict would be more than double the severity of the Great Financial Crisis.
The contagion would be global. The whole world would suffer. But the pain would be absolutely acute for economies that are deeply tied to that semiconductor supply chain. South Korea's GDP would plummet. But make no mistake, both China and the United States would face severe economic contractions. This isn't a market correction we're talking about. This is the blueprint for a global depression.
Okay, so this level of systemic risk, it's not going unnoticed. Governments, capital markets, they're already reacting. There's a massive strategic pivot underway to de-risk this concentration. And the first and most important part is the onshoring pivot.
The U.S. CHIPS Act is really the centerpiece of this whole strategy. It's not just an industrial policy, it's a national security imperative. We're talking about a multi-billion-dollar investment designed to bring critical semiconductor manufacturing back home. And that capital is flowing not just into massive new fabrication plants, but into the entire domestic ecosystem, from equipment makers to material suppliers.
And this data from PwC, it shows the pivot is already shaping the landscape.
By 2030, Taiwan's dominant share of manufacturing is projected to fall from 48% all the way down to 37%. And as you can see, that market share is shifting, with both the United States and China forecast to make some pretty aggressive gains. This is the geopolitical realignment of the tech supply chain, and it is happening right now.
So, rebuilding supply chains is the first major pivot. But a truly adapted portfolio also has to hedge against the consequences of a more unstable world. And that brings us to our final strategic shifts. It's simple, really. A more dangerous world leads directly to higher defense spending. We are entering a new, technology-focused defense cycle. Investment is pouring into areas like AI, unmanned systems, and advanced battlefield sensors. And what's the one critical component for every single one of these next-gen platforms? You guessed it, advanced semiconductors. It creates a direct feedback loop between geopolitical tension and the demand for high-performance computing.
And this leads us to our third pivot, the classic flight to safety. In times of geopolitical conflict and supply chain fragility, capital historically rotates away from financial assets and towards hard assets. It's a fundamental shift, moving away from promises of future growth to the security of tangible value. Now, this isn't just a theory. Major institutions are recommending this exact strategy. JP Morgan, looking ahead to what it calls an era of fragmentation, states directly that gold and energy commodities can serve as valuable hedges. This shows that hard assets are being reevaluated as essential diversifiers for a much more unstable world.
And we can see this institutional conviction reflected in some aggressive price targets for gold. Standard Chartered is forecasting $4,500, with UBS at $3,500. This is not a bet on short-term inflation, okay? This is a structural revaluation based on the perception of rising, persistent, systemic risk in the global financial and political system.
And this geopolitical risk premium, it's being added right on top of a significant erosion in the value of our fiat currencies. Since 2020 alone, American consumers have seen their purchasing power decline by nearly 20%. So, in an environment where both political stability and currency stability are in question, gold's historical role as a store of value becomes absolutely paramount.
All right, let's summarize the key intel here. The risk and extreme concentration in the semiconductor supply chain is a systemic threat. The catalyst, the silicon shield theory, is obsolete, and a blockade is a plausible, high-impact event. The pivot, capital is already rotating toward resilience, focusing on U.S. onshoring, high-tech defense, and hard assets as a geopolitical hedge.
And this all brings us to the final question. The investment strategies that worked so well during an era of stable globalization are now exposed to a whole new set of risks. The world has changed. So, is your portfolio built for the reality of the last decade, or is it prepared for the challenges of the next one? Subscribe for more intel. I'm Mr. Tommy for FinAnatomy.